Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nick Butler from the Modeshift STARS Accreditation Scheme, and welcome to this webinar that's going to be looking at active and sustainable travel and the opportunities for schools to promote active and sustainable travel, particularly during this time as we look to various measures to increase physical activity as we look to recover from the COVID pandemic. First of all, just some quick housekeeping information. So mics and cameras, there's not a huge number of us on this call, but it'd still be helpful if you could keep mics and cameras switched off for now, just so that we can ensure the quality of the call remains as high as it can be. Obviously, if you do have any questions at any point, we can use the raise your hand feature or the meeting chat. And at that point, feel free to switch your camera on or your microphone on if you wish to ask any questions. There will be time allocated for questions after each presentation, but if anything pressing comes up, we can keep it quite informal, and do feel free to use either of those two features. PDF copies of these presentations will be sent out to all participants after the event, so keep an eye out for those coming. And just to let you all know that the webinar is being recorded, so keep that in mind if you do want to switch your camera off on at any point or ask any questions. The whole webinar is being recorded and links will be sent out afterwards. Moving on, I just want to give you a quick introduction to what Modeshift STARS is and what we're all about first. This is our brand new definition that we only signed off with the Modeshift Management Board a week ago. So effectively, what we're saying is effective travel plans are vital for a healthier, greener and safer future as they promote and enable more sustainable and active modes of travel. Modeshift work with thousands of businesses, education and community settings across the UK to improve travel plan standards, share best practice and award Modeshift STARS accreditation. The Modeshift STARS scheme empowers organisations, so including schools, by providing a centre of excellence for developing travel plans, for delivering travel plans and monitoring effective travel plans. So that's what we're here about. That's what the whole thing, that's what Modeshift STARS exists to achieve, more effective travel plans. A quick overview of what I'm going to cover in the first part of this webinar before I pass on to my colleague Davies. So I just want to give you an overview of what Modeshift, how Modeshift works with local authorities and schools to increase levels of walking, cycling, public transport. The first part of the webinar will look at the Modeshift STARS scheme specifically, and I will put a little break in there if any questions come up after that point. And then the second part is going to have a little look at active travel at school in response to COVID-19. So a real quick whistle-stop tour through some of the things and types of activities and initiatives you might deliver in an action plan. None of it's compulsory, so it's just to hopefully give a few ideas of the types of things that you might do. Just one shout out that I've been requested to put in by Cornwall Council before I go into my main slides. There is an opportunity for schools and teachers to make a pledge to become a Cornwall Active Travel Champion. So the link's at the bottom of the slide there, and this will be shared again at the end of the presentation. But if you make a pledge, there's an opportunity for you guys to win an extra 12 bikeability places for your school. So do make sure you give that link a click and see what that's all about. Okay, so to set off, I just first wanted to set the scene a little bit for how young people get to school at the moment. These figures are a couple of years out of date, so it only runs up till 2017, but there's not a huge amount changed in the last 2 years. And what you see right over on the left-hand side of the table is travel to school figures for 1995 to 1997. And you see that walking levels at the top there were about 47%, car use was about 30%. And as we follow it all along to the right-hand side, there's not massive fluctuations, but there's a reduction in walking and an increase in car use all the same. So walking has gone down from 47 to 44%. Car use has gone from 30 up to 35%. The more concerning thing for me is that those lines are coming closer and closer together. And what we really want to avoid is those crossing over and car use become the more dominant mode of transport. But as it is for now, the walking is by far the most popular form of getting to school at the moment. The figures further down show other modes. So we've got bike in there, public transport, surface rail. The local bus is the 12% figure, whereas the others are sort of falling below 5%. So make it all a nice messy bit of graph at the bottom there. You may have been familiar with some of those figures. I want to introduce some different figures now, just to sort of set the context a little further. So this data is even older. It's from the school census in 2010, at which point the Department for Transport and Department for Education were collecting data on how pupils travel to school, along with other pupil census data, but particularly postcode. And that meant we could get some really rich data on the distances pupils were traveling and by which mode. Interestingly, this data is still collected by a lot of schools, but it's not compulsory anymore. So we don't have a national data set anywhere like what we had from 2010. But what's really interesting about this data, and these bullet points here look at car use, and it tells us that 8.2% of all car trips to school were less than a quarter of a mile. And that's a distance that could probably be walked in round about 5-10 minutes. And further to that, 21.1% of car journeys to school were between a quarter and half a mile. So we're looking at huge numbers of car trips. This is figures for England. So every single day in 2010, over 330,000 car trips a day were on the school run, but were for journeys of less than half a mile, distances that could easily be walked in 10 minutes. So I don't imagine those figures have changed massively since 2010. Generally, National Travel Survey data shows that distances to school have increased only by very minor percentages. So we're probably still looking at similar figures of number of extremely short car journeys that could be flipped to more sustainable and active modes. So still lots and lots of potential for more walking and cycling. So how do Modeshift work to try and address that and make sure that those walking and car use lines don't cross? Well, we basically have this new idea of Team Modeshift, and that is anyone, whoever they might be, whether it's a head teacher, a caretaker in a school, a parent volunteer, all you guys that are on the call today, David, who's on the call working with Sustrans, basically anyone who can have an impact on how pupils and young people make that journey to school is part of this Team Modeshift, and working collectively, working together on towards the same aims and objectives, then we can make a difference. Currently, Modeshift work with over 70 local authorities. The figure's very shortly going to hit 76 local authorities that use the Modeshift STARS scheme to promote sustainable and active travel. And amongst them, they represent over 15,000 schools in England. And we also work with the Department for Transport on STARS. So they back our scheme, and I'll say a little bit more about that in some slides later on. And we have a National Schools Awards panel with external stakeholders as well, who decide which schools should be recognised as our top schools each year. The bottom part of the table there shows that we work with business and community sectors as well. So we've currently got over 500 business and community organisations that are on Modeshift STARS. It says 25 plus there, but we've actually just in the last couple of weeks passed 30 local authorities using STARS Business as well. So lots of businesses starting to look at more effective travel plans now. What are they all doing? Well, they're working towards STARS accreditation. School travel plans have been around for a long time now. It was the early 2000s that we saw the first school travel plans emerge. But in the late noughties, around 2008 was when we introduced Modeshift STARS, which is all about recognising and celebrating those schools that have a travel plan but actually go on to deliver it. And that's expanded ever since with the STARS Business and STARS Community accreditation as well. And the reason that we do it is to have the focus on delivery. So as I've said, there's lots of school travel plans been developed. The Travelling to School initiative that ran from 2003 to 2010 saw 94% of schools in England develop a school travel plan. But the question was how many of those were effective. So Modeshift STARS is all about delivery. It's great to have a travel plan, but we must be seeing those actually get delivered. The diagram, the figure of 8 we have on the left there, is basically the STARS process. So it starts with you guys getting registered. You get a login to the system where you can develop, deliver, and monitor your travel plan. You do an audit of your site to see what sort of infrastructure is in place, what sort of road conditions you've got, cycle lanes, cycle parking, condition of pavements for crossing roads, things like that. conduct a survey of how pupils and staff travel to school and how they'd like to travel to school. And based on that information, you can plan and deliver a whole range of actions then, which we'll explore a little bit later today as well. Once you've delivered those actions, that's when you should be in a position to apply for national accreditation then. So we've got 3 levels, bronze, silver and gold at the moment. You'll be at that point where you'll be able to submit. And then ideally, we'd like you to stay on that process, a continuous process of reviewing what you're doing, planning more initiatives, planning more actions, delivering more, and then going on to achieve those higher levels of accreditation as you see walking and cycling levels start to rise. Just before I finish on the STARS bit, there's just a bit more context really on why we're looking at focusing on schools. So we know there are over 24,000 schools in England, around 8.7 million pupils and around 900,000 teaching staff. So when you add that all together, we can say that effective school travel planning directly impacts around 10 million people, which effectively is 18% of the population. However, it's more than that because we've got grandparents, parents, families, neighbours, all things like that. We know from 2013 figures, there's 7.7 million families in the UK with dependent children. So once you add everyone else in that's indirectly impacted, that's not necessarily at the school, but has a pupil at the school, then targeting schools affects approximately 20 to 25 million people, which is therefore 36 to 45% of the population. So it's absolutely worth targeting these messages in this area. So this is what we're about, Modeshift STARS Accreditation. The map on the left there shows where all of our accredited schools are. This is of September 2019, so it is slightly out of date. There's a few more to add there, but you can see there's plenty of scope down in the southwest for you guys to join us and fill in that map a little bit more for us. So I'm quite excited to see who can be the first Cornwall school to get a pin on that map. Currently, we have it's just past 1,500 schools actually. We've got 1,462 there, but we've just passed 1,500 schools accredited. And between them, they've had over 2,300 successful accreditation applications. Here are the levels, and I mentioned a couple of slides ago that there are 3 award levels, but actually we're just about, well, imminently, we're going to be launching 2 new levels. So there's the STARS Green Award, which will be for an approved travel plan document, and a STARS Platinum Award, which will be our brand new award, which focuses purely on increasing levels of active travel. So there's 5 levels for you guys to go at for accreditation. Beyond accreditation, we have the regional and national awards, and that's where the Department for Transport come in. So they support us with celebrating the very best schools from each local authority area. And in normal times, we'd currently be away on tour doing our regional awards events. The pictures on the left are from our awards events last year. And the pictures on the right, or the picture on the right, is from our national event in May 2019, where the Transport Secretary gave out the awards to the national winners. For anyone that's interested, we will actually have our national awards event for 2020, slightly delayed due to current circumstances. It's taking place on Friday, the 4th of December, and that'll be a webinar this year, so you'll be able to log in and see what those schools have done to achieve their School of the Region status and find out which is the National School of the Year. And just finally on STARS, just some evidence to show that it does work and that it's worth getting involved in. So these are figures representing all of the schools that have achieved Modeshift STARS accreditation up to September 2019. So the 2 figures on the left show for all accredited schools, bronze, silver or gold. And on average, they've seen a reduction in car use of 9 percentage points. That corresponds with an increase in walking of 2.4%. In the middle, we've got the silver and gold schools. So they on average have seen a reduction in car use of 22.2% and an increase in walking of 4.7%. And finally, on the right-hand side, this is data just for our gold schools. And on, excuse me, on average, they've seen an increase in cycling of 19%. Okay, I'm going to take a short break there just to see if there are any questions. Feel free to use hands up or type in the chat if there are. And if there aren't, I'll carry on in a second. Okay, we've got a question from Mr. Russell. Do you want to unmute and go ahead?
Good afternoon, Nick. Just a quick question really about where this sits with the Healthy Schools Accreditation. Does it sit alongside it, or I'm guessing some information from this may well be able to get used in that from the sort of the active travel section of the Healthy Schools Award?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the latter really. We were previously, when there was the National Healthy Schools Programme, there was a requirement in there to have a school travel plan, and there's that active travel element. But more recently, Healthy Schools has been a more regional or even local authority based scheme. So the way Modeshift works, we sort of sit centrally, operate in the scheme for local authorities, and then local authorities choose how to deliver it locally. So it's probably a chat to have with local Healthy Schools teams and between the Cornwall Council team that's behind STARS to see how those links can be strengthened, really.
Yeah, lovely, thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, so I'm going to go back into the slides, and this section is going to focus more on kind of what's happening as a national picture in terms of prioritizing active travel, but also some of the things you might consider for, or the types of activities you might consider for your own action plans as well. The big update came from the Department for Transport, so they have something called the Traffic Management Act. And there's in the italics there's a direct excerpt from the latest update from them. So they've said encouraging walking and cycling to school, for example, through the introduction of more school streets, pioneered in London. These are areas around schools where motor traffic is restricted at pick-up and drop-off times during the term time. So they've actually made a change to some of the Traffic Management Act rules and the obligations on local authorities to ensure that better infrastructure is built for walking and cycling. And local authorities have received funding known as the Emergency Active Travel Fund, it came out in August, and local authorities had until the end of September to spend it to build on things like pop-up cycle lanes, giving more space to pedestrians and school streets as well. Emergency Active Travel Fund Tranche 2 is due to be announced imminently. I'd expect sort of late this month or early December. So there'll be more money coming Cornwall's way. So for anyone that's interested, it might be worth checking out how some of that funding's been spent. With Modeshift STARS, what we advocate is that to really achieve behaviour change, then you need a really broad package of measures that looks at delivering across different modes of travel, but also different types of activities that complement that as well. This is a graph that we use in this is a table we use in most of our training sessions to kind of emphasize that a little bit more. So to really achieve that behavior change, you need to do lots of positive stuff around walking, cycling, sustainable transport, so public transport, train. And that's cognitive things, so giving people information about the choices available to them and giving them incentives to change their behavior that promote those walking and cycling. So you see lots of bikers' breakfasts, giving stickers out, rewards charts, things like that. And then we also need positive physical infrastructure for those modes. So things like cycle lanes, cycle parking facilities and things like that. And also the skills. So making sure people have bikeability training, so they're cycling safely, and pedestrian training, so that they know how to cross roads safely. The other thing we need, which is a little more tricky, and always has been tricky for transport professionals, is doing negative stuff. And that's negative stuff focused on making the mode that we want people move away from more difficult. So in terms of the cognitive thing, that's like focusing on the disincentives to driving and talking about the harm they have on the environment. But also on the physical side, building in infrastructure that actually restricts cars, taking space away from them, taking parking spaces away, taking space on the highway network for giving it to pedestrians and cyclists instead. So that's a much more tricky side, but with the Emergency Active Travel Fund, it's made it more possible in recent months. Just a little bit more focus on that package. So in terms of information, you might think of things like mapping projects to give maps out to parents, prospective parents, pupils, to show them what their sustainable travel options are. Just the map just hiding underneath the other one there sort of shows walking zones as well, so showing people the distances they might travel. Looking at getting the infrastructure right, so we've got examples there of 20-mile-an-hour zones to make the space around school safer crossings, more cycle parking facilities so if pupils want to cycle, there's somewhere safe to leave their bike when they arrive at school. The incentives, and this is where sort of sustainable travel professionals excel, just doing lots of fun activities and events to make walking and cycling a real celebration. So we've got things like the Bike Around the Borough picture in the top left, which is a Hackney, a London scheme where they get the whole, or pupils from across the area cycling through the borough. We've got celebration stations in the bottom left, rolling out the red carpet at the entrance that pedestrians and cyclists use to give them a reward for choosing an active mode to get to school. Bikers breakfast or active travel breakfast, and then loads of fun themed walks. We've then got skills. So I've already mentioned bikeability training and cycle training. You might think of cycle maintenance training as well, and doctor bike sort of stuff to make sure that the bikes that pupils are using to get to school are all properly maintained as well. Just coming back to that package, and this is more particularly in response to COVID, we've never had an opportunity like we've got now to really focus on that negative stuff. So I mentioned Emergency Active Travel Fund, which is giving the funding to finally take space away from cars, but we've also got the political will. So we've got the Department for Transport telling us to do these type of schemes at the moment, and we've got local councillors wanting schemes that reduce car use and give priority to pedestrians and cyclists. So there's a massive opportunity for us at the moment, including schools, to look at taking measures and working with the local council to put measures in place to really prioritise walking and cycling. The big response to that is school streets. And a school street is essentially a temporary timed road closure outside the school, on the roads directly outside the school, during the drop-off and pick-up times in the morning and afternoon. And we're starting to see these really roll out across the country now. The DFT are making it easy for local authorities to implement. The funding from the Emergency Active Travel Fund is making sure that there's the cash available to do them. And there's all sorts cropping up from Hackney in London, who did the first in England, right up to Cumbria in the northwest, who are really pushing on for school street schemes now as well. What we recognise, though, particularly as Modeshift, we absolutely support school streets. We do training courses on school streets, but with the best will in the world, it just isn't possible to set up school streets for every school in the country within such a short period of time and get them all going. So what we've introduced as a response is a new Stay Safe, Get Active campaign, which allows schools, it allows local authorities to log into the Modeshift STARS system and create their own 5-minute walking bubble map on the system. It's completely free to every school in England outside of London. So you just log into the scheme, create that bubble, and there's these couple of screenshots basically show the process. What this hides is there is one step first. You have to register for Modeshift STARS first. But once you're in, it's a 4-step process to create that map. You simply log into the system, click on our Perform Process button, which appears in the top right corner of the STARS screen once you're in. Click on the Generate Walking Bubble tab, make sure the map's centered where you want it to be centered, click Save, and then you'll receive an email with a walking bubble map and a template parents letter to send out to promote your bubble as well. This is an example of what it looks like. So that your map's in the center, your school name's on the left, and on the right-hand side is our key messages, which we've kept super simple, like the Department for Transport have done with their return to school messaging. So simply protect our children, if possible, walk or cycle or scoot to school. And if you have to drive, please park at least 5 minutes away. So it's almost getting schools, getting parents, getting anyone who's driving to school to voluntarily sign up to a school street scheme without physical measures being in place. That's obviously just a map template that gets sent out, but we have actually worked with a Modeshift partner to create a whole range of Stay Safe, Get Active resources as well. So if anyone wanted to take that further, there's a link to the Bright Kids store there, where you can get railing banners, lamppost covers, floor vinyls, flags, bunting, stickers, all sorts of stuff to promote that walking bubble. That's it for me. I'll open up for more questions now, and we have a full hour on this call, so I can hang around till the end of the call if there's anyone wanting to have a chat as well. But yeah, any questions on any of that? Mr. Russell, your hand's up again. Is that on purpose?
Yeah, got another question, unfortunately.
Go for it.
Through Modeshift STARS, do you have sort of access to funding stream? Because obviously one of our issues we've got currently at school is we're trying to encourage more students to scooter to school and ride to school, but then having facilities or storage areas for the students, especially now with the COVID stuff where we have to have sort of separate storage areas for every single year group.
Yeah.
Is there any funding out there available to put towards sort of storage areas for bikes, scooters, lockups, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so not nationally. We have fed back to Department for Transport, and we are encouraging them to reintroduce a national fund to support that sort of thing. Yeah. So if any of you remember the Travel into School initiative and school travel plans back in the noughties, the creation of a school travel plan got you access to a capital grant to do things like that. So that's something we're really trying to encourage government to reintroduce, particularly with the other investment they're putting into walking and cycling at the moment. So unfortunately, nationally, no, it doesn't get you access. Locally, that might be a different story. So I'm not familiar, I'm afraid, with what sort of funding pots Cornwall have available at the moment, but certainly in other parts of the country, participation in Modeshift STARS helps local authorities to prioritise who does get the limited funding that's available. Mm-hmm. And if nothing else, the surveys and the site audit do highlight and give you sort of a case, a rationale for asking for that funding as well.
Yeah. And is it free to register for the Modeshift STARS?
Yeah, absolutely free. Yeah. You just click on the, go into the Modeshift website and click on the register link in the top right corner. There's no charge at all to use the scheme there.
Lovely, thank you.
No probs. Any more questions?
Just to say, Nick, it's Dave here, by the way. Just to say that I might be able to answer that question with regards to funding. I do have a slide which has a Cornwall Council contact details for regards to funding through cycle and scooter storage.
Cool, sounds good. So I think, Dave, we'll pass straight on to you there with your slides. You can either try take control of mine, or do you want to share your screen now?
Put myself off mute first. Share my screen, and yeah, and if there's any tech gremlins, I'll come to you.
Yeah, cool. I'll stop sharing now then.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Just bear with me, everyone. I'll just take control of the screen. I'll just share. I need to get the right slide of it. That's the main thing. That one. Right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, we've got you.
Yep. Okay. Right. I'll enlarge it and I'll just start from who I am. So, yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Dave Davies. I'm a Sustrans active travel officer. Just a little bit of background with regards to what it is we do and who we are. We're a sustainable charity, which was first organised in Bristol in the 80s. One of the things, well, our ethos is about cutting down congestion around a school gate. There are three officers who work in the southwest. There's myself, Nick Ratcliffe, and Angie Squires. So I mainly cover sort of west of Cornwall. Yeah, don't let the accent fool you. It's yeah, I'm a bit further west than where I normally am. But yeah, so there's Nick Ratcliffe, who covers sort of the central areas, sort of around Truro, Falmouth, and Penryn, and then Angie Squires, who covers Bodmin, Liskeard, and those particular, and St Austell, those areas. So I cover Camborne, Redruth, and Newquay now, and Poole. So yeah, our ethos is about cutting down congestion around the school gates, and some of the ways we've done this is by the sort of lots of activities. There are only 3 of us, so it's impossible for us to work with every school. So we work on project basis. So we're basically Cornwall Council, because we work alongside Cornwall Council Infrastructure and Strategy Department, Transportation Department. So the one of the things is that we look at how we can implement change, and we contact schools within these particular areas, offering our services. And there are a number of stuff that we can do, but obviously with the current situation of COVID, we were asked to come back and deliver a whole range of activities and information sort of leaflets. So I'm going to go through these and show you them. And then I'm going to pause, and then you can ask some questions, and I'll then, like Nick, I'll show you some more slides and some good news stories which had come from this. So we were asked to we work in particular areas, but when we were brought back from, because we were furloughed for 3 months, well, 2.5 months, when we were brought back from furlough scheme, we were asked to contact all secondary schools within a Cornwall county. So what is there's about 38 secondary schools, and we were asked to produce a series of documents to help them with active travel, because mainly with the obviously shortage of bus usage within each sort of secondary school. So that was one of the reasons we were brought in. But also it was a thing about them thinking about the time of them traveling during a sort of lockdown period, how the environment was and how it was felt at that particular time. And I think with our way of thinking, it was a good thing in a way. There were lots more people out on bikes, cycling, walking, families enjoying time together. So we were thinking about different ways we could obviously still implement this. And one of the things we've done, we come up with a lot of sort of worksheets. So these are the areas that we sort of mainly work within. CPR is Narcotic, is Reputation, is and then Truro, Bodmin, and then these were the other areas we were asked to work in. So these were extended areas for the 3 officers. And this is what we've come up with, which is a Sustrans Active Travel Toolkit. So I'm going on to the next slide. And basically say once you've click into the top site, which is cornwall.gov.uk active travel, all the links below, you will get these to come up. I'll click on one link and I'll just show you one of the documents. So request, let's look at well, one of the ones is parents, so scooting, routes to schools and maps. Again, follow on from the STARS. This will sit alongside sort of STARS, all these active travel modes, so you can use these. And I say there are lots of sort of resources, but if you want to the Sustrans active travel pages, there are lots more resources on there as well. Lots of curriculum based resources that you could use as well. So if I just click onto the primary back to school for parents, hopefully it will work. Right, has that come up? No. Okay, I'll try it again. Yeah, here we go. Has that come up? Yeah. Right. Okay, so you can see as being part of the solution. And again, I'm just going to click down. I say these will all be available anyway, so I'm not going to give you death by PowerPoint. And you'll see all the resources and all the links that you can have access to. And I think it was someone who inquired about, sort of school grants, grants for scooter and, cycle facilities, parking facilities. There are, on one of the other slides, you can actually get access, to these particular funding applications. But I say you can, contact, transport@cornwall.gov. And if it's not on here, I'm sure you'll get the information through there. Okay, so I'm going to click out of that one. Okay, click out of that. Oh, are we still there? Where am I? I knew this would happen. Am I all still with you?
Got your PowerPoint slide on at the moment, Dave.
The what, sorry?
You can see your PowerPoint at the moment.
Ah, there we go. Okay, so let me just go back. Right. Okay. I'm not too sure how many schools who took part in incentives during particular national activities throughout sort of COVID. One of the things that there was, which was the Bike to School Week. And this is a 2-week period of encouraging children and parents and staff as well, to cycle to school. This was a school that took part, which is Pen Ponds. A nice quote from the year 5-6 teacher, which you can see there. And they've seen a real big increase with students cycling to school, even after the Bike to School Week. There are other incentives, which is, the Big Pedal, which is a Sustrans initiative. And again, that's over a 2-week period, which happens in April next year. There's another one, which is the, Walk to School Week as well. So there's lots of incentives that you can take part in. And these can be added to, to say that you've taken part in these particular events. And you can add these to your Modeshift STARS. Okay. Travel directly. One of the things where I sort of get them to do, again, promoting active travel within schools. One of the things I do lots of sort of classroom-based stuff and working part of the curriculum. But this was something I did with a secondary school where I got them to design a poster to go up in and around their school. But not only that, it's I think a couple of doctors' surgeries have used this as well. So this particular slide, I say, is done, from a secondary school. So it's something that you can do within the schools, is getting the children actually involved in promoting active travel. And then there's lots of ways you can do that by creating active travel, clubs, active travel, or sustainable travel. They can have their own name. I've got one which is called, Keep Calm and Pedal On, group. So yeah, getting students involved is, I think, a big, way of encouraging active travel within the school. I'm going to finish there, but I'm going to open up for any questions, because as I say, I don't want to give it death by PowerPoint. If you do want to contact us, and if you can't find sorts of resources that you're looking for, this is our contact details on the bottom here. Okay. Right. Let me just finish there. I'll stop sharing.
There was one question for you on there, Dave, from Tamsin.
Yeah.
Can you come and see them to develop bike maintenance session for the students at Camborne?
At Camborne? Is this Camborne International Science Academy, or?
Perhaps Tamsin can come on.
Tamsin, if you unmute yourself.
Hi Dave, sorry, I was trying to work out the buttons on here. Yeah, so yeah, we're Camborne Science International Academy. I've just spoken with Sue Galatly, who's our personal development coordinator, and she said that she's tried to speak to you already, but was hoping to do it. Yeah.
Sorry, Tamsin. Yeah.
Yeah, so Sue said she was really keen to get somebody in to come and run some bike maintenance sessions as like our first step to then encourage the students to have more active travel going on. Yes.
Yeah. That's no problem. I think I spoke to who was it I spoke to? I can't remember. It was only because my children go to that school. So
yes, you mentioned it.
Anyway, it's but yeah, that's no problem. I did contact the school a while ago, but never heard anything back. But yeah, it's great to make that contact. But if you want to contact me at all through that email address at the bottom, do so, and we can arrange something to do that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Do we have any more questions? Cool. So what we'll do then, we'll bring it to a close there. As I said, I will hang around just to see if anyone does have any questions that come up. And just while I'm doing that, I was going to say I was going to stop with the recording, but I don't have the permissions to do that, I'm afraid. I was going to say you can ask questions once you're not going to be recorded, but I can't promise that, I'm afraid. So I've just brought up to finish that slide, that reminder to make a pledge to be a Cornwall Active Travel Champion. So please feel free to head onto there and make that pledge. And yeah, thank you for your time this afternoon. Just a reminder, the slides will be emailed to you, so you can view them as a PDF later on. And the recording of the webinar will be shared later next week as well, I believe. But otherwise, thank you for your time.